Let's go back now where that this first vision first started, where they saw the king's carriage. First of all, he seen the driver underneath the carriage on the ground, just back of the heels of the horses and just right underneath the wheels. And let's just see what a dangerous place that the man was in that was doing this work between the carriage and the horses. And let's just see for a little bit what would have happened if these horses wasn't disciplined, and if they chose to move without the voice of the master. And they were trained to know his voice. You know, there's many voices, and the colts seem to have voices to have spoke to them, and but they stood still, waiting for the voice of the master. And how many today move about doing things instead of waiting on the voice of the master? In other words, doing things on their own, taking what seems to be good things and just going ahead and doing things within their own selves, seeming to never get nothing accomplished. And this is but doing it without heeding to the master's voice, and being disciplined to move when he says move, to stand still until he says move, and to not weary in standing still, or not to grow impatient. And it showed that these horses were standing perfectly still. Not even the bells on their feet were tinkling. And therefore, they were well disciplined, and they had already submitted themselves into the master's will in the corral, where they were trained, and they'd learned how to take orders and not to do anything until they'd received orders from the master. And this will just give us some idea as to what it means to mind the voice of the Spirit, or to wait upon the Lord. Now these two young colts, I knew or know that it might be a great temptation. You take to be standing there in the harness in the hot sunshine, waiting for the master's use, not seemingly to some for anything to be accomplished, and to get to run free out there in the pasture where there's a lot of green grass, a lot of fresh streams, and to just do your own thing. That would be a temptation. And this is where the two young colts represent young Christians that are just in a hurry to do some things, and will compromise and will go along with great maneuvering and a runner free, but they have never learned, and they've got to be brought to a place where that they must submit their total beings into the hands of the great master, to where that they turn everything over into his hands and only move when he moves, and to say that he is Lord, and Lord means one that ruleth, and he only rules if we obey his commands and not move until he does give a command. And being in service, realizing that it was a great responsibility lay upon an individual to move only when he was told to move, or to wait when he was told to wait, and to learn to be disciplined. And if you didn't learn to take orders or to be disciplined, you never made it out of boot camp. This is what boot camp was for, was to learn an individual disciplined. And if he didn't learn discipline, he was discharged, undesirable, or with a discharge writing in the effect that he was not able or capable of adapting himself to that kind of life. Well, this is what happened to the colts. Over further on, this one rebelled. He wasn't able to adapt himself to that kind of life. Therefore, many called, few chosen. He was just turned out, and he wasn't turned out. He chose. A man chooses his destiny. Therefore, you'd wonder why that the master didn't go after the one that jumped the fence. If he did, he would have been infringing on that which represented a young Christian's free moral agency. Therefore, it was the colt's own choosing. Therefore, if we come to the part where the colts are brought into the master's corral for discipline and training, lots of times, whenever we have tests and trials, and we have a tendency to all run on our face before God and say, why are you doing all this to us? why is all this coming on me? I'm doing everything I know to do. But it's only through trials and testings that true character is built. And God is interested in character. And it's through this that makes us strong to overcome. And through this, trials that teach. And it's not, you take Job, for instance. He was tried and tested. And it was sole purpose was for to prove his love for God. Because, it's just like a conversation between God and the devil said, he brought a proposition before God, and God asked, had they ever considered his servant Job? And all of this was brought upon Job to prove his love for God. And you take Abraham, he was tested, though his only son. He was tested and asked to offer his son as a sacrifice. And when all this ordeal was over, which he didn't have to give it, but in his heart he had given. But after this test was all over, he said, now, Abraham, I know. He knew some things about Abraham after Abraham had been tested. And really, until training or discipline comes about, we are never can be trusted until we've passed the test. And this is what the trials and testing is for, to prove us worthy for the Master's use. And this is the training and discipline that takes place either in boot camp if you're going in service or in the corral with the colts.